Hello and welcome to Teenagers Untangled, the audio hug for parents going into or through the teenage years. I'm Rachel Richards.
And I'm Susie Asley.
Susie, lots of kids are starting at a new school this year.
Yeah.
I moved schools a lot as a child and as a teen, so I have plenty of personal experience, including moving mid-year. We've also had kids going to secondary, and you've had a son move from a private to a state sector school, haven't you?
Yeah.
Which is an education in itself.
Yeah.
Yes. So today we're going to talk about what we wish we'd known when our teens started their new schools. The key things we can do to support that transition and what to expect, including practical things as well as emotional support. Now, it matters because according to the Education Endowment Foundation, which is an independent charity dedicated to breaking the link between family income and educational achievement, parental engagement for teens has a positive impact on average of 2 months additional progress over a school year.
Wow. Gosh, that's huge.
They evaluated this in 10 countries around the world and had broadly similar findings.
Wow.
So it does matter.
Yeah. Gosh.
Right. So before we move on to that, let's begin with our nuggets. Susie.
Okay. Well, I have it's summer holidays still here, and I've just been away with my family. There were 12 of us.
12.
We're all,
which is great.
I know, it was amazing. It's
also
amazing.
A bit overwhelming.
Well, no, we're all alive still. No, it was a lot of fun actually, we're in different places. And my nugget is actually that myself and my partner and my twins were all staying in the same place. My eldest was staying with his cousins. They have a little a cottage where we were staying.
Tell us where you were again. Tell us.
We were in Ireland, in Dunfanaghy. In Ireland.
To be sure.
Dunfanaghy. We spoke with a bad Irish accent all week.
Wonderful.
And we were staying in this place, and my twins, boy-girl twins, they shared a room, and they get on brilliantly now. They haven't always, they've always got on, but they just seem a lot closer now. And one day there was something happened at home, which my boy twin found a bit weird, and it's all resolved. And my twin girl said something a bit insensitive about it, and he got really angry, and they really fell out, which is very unusual because he's super, super laid back and doesn't normally get riled at stuff. So they properly fell out. I had to kind of go in and make sure they were all right. And then about, I don't know, it's only about 20 minutes later, we went out to do something together, and just my daughter apologized. She just stopped. Wow. And she just went, "I'm really sorry." And then she said, "Why?" So she said, I said something insensitive. I didn't mean to upset you. I'm really sorry." My boy twin went, "Oh, that's okay." And I really overreacted, and he explained why. And I stood there like grabbing the wall. They're 15.
That is
It was amazing. And then they made up, and then it was gone. Absolutely
Wonderful
gone.
skills.
And I praised them to the roof and said I thought that was amazing.
Yes,
it was really beautiful.
So they
really beautiful.
This is, we just grow. They come on. We need to model this ourselves so that they can see how they can do this.
Exactly.
And it's not about shame.
No.
When you apologise, it's about building your relationship.
Yeah, and I've always said to them, if something goes wrong, apologise, explain why, and then move on. And they did, and it was really beautiful.
Wonderful. Well done, you. So for me, my daughter, for me, it's going to be something that is related to starting school. So my older daughter, I'm sure she wouldn't mind me saying this, when she first started secondary school, it was really tough. And part of it was because it was during that sort of just after the COVID lockdown, and they were still wearing masks all the time, and it was very stressful because they weren't allowed to socialise at all except in their own little groups. And she kept saying to me, "There's just, these people aren't like me." And part of it was that she'd come from a small school to a big school. A lot of the kids had all come up together because they had been to the same school, and a lot of them had mobile phones and had used them a lot. Now, we weren't that kind of family. And she just said, "I just can't connect with them because they're on their phones all the time, and, they're all talking about people I don't know." So I kept saying to her, "Well, why don't you just kind of, we play cards a lot at home. Why don't you just introduce cards or kick the can? Everyone can play." She just said, no, they're not like that at all. They don't like it. And she was very scared. And I completely understand that because I probably would feel the same. And I tried to explain to her that the reason those kids were doing that, using their phones, they were clinging to them like life rafts, and they were talking to people they knew because it's much easier than trying to talk to new people. So they were using these as a means of just coping with a new situation. And she has since found out this summer that, a couple of the girls that she knew at that time both love playing games, playing cards, kick the can, all that stuff.
Crazy.
But it's about the environment as well, isn't it? So, I've actually messaged the teacher who's sort of in charge of them and just said, what would be a lovely tweak this year is if you can get the older girls to, get out, kick the can or get out cards or something and just normalize playing those sorts of games so that those kids know how to do it. Because they probably do know, but everyone's going to revert to what it seems like everyone else is doing. Right. So it's been a revelation for her. She's so much happier now, but it's worth noting that.
Amazing. That's really lovely.
Any change can be stressful. Moving schools, particularly from primary to secondary, can feel daunting for both the child and the parents. So we thought it would be great to do this episode talking about what we have been through and what we know. Top tip. We think school learning is really important. Don't we? When our kids are going to senior school, it's like, they're going to have to learn all these really important things. For the kids, I think new friendships and relationships are way more important. Their image is important. Their hormones will be great. When my kids came home, maybe about 10% of what they'd want to talk about was schoolwork.
Yeah. Oh gosh, 10%. Mine's probably about 0.5%.
Yes.
It's friendship. Right. I never ask about their work as if the first question. It's always who did you have lunch with?
Yeah, exactly. So that's the one thing to keep that in your mind. Okay, for you, we need to make sure they're doing well at school. That's just not important to them, as important as the other stuff.
And it's all, as we know and we have spoken about before, if they're happy with their friendships, they will be learning.
Yeah,
if they're not happy with their friendships, they won't be learning.
Yes.
So it's
or some of them do kind of just hide themselves in their work because they just don't know how to make friends.
That's true.
Anyway, and remember, teachers are human too. They will have had endless meetings in preparation for this new term. Mm-hmm. And yes, they've had a holiday, but they have to get to know a whole new cohort of kids. So just remember, there's a human being the other side who really cares. They want to love your kids and get on well with them and do well.
Yeah. And I've been a teacher. Yes, I am a teacher. And you have, there's types of teachers as well, which kids, relate or don't relate to. There are the ones that go back, gung-ho. They've spent weeks preparing. They've got these really exciting lessons and it's amazing. And the kids are like, oh my God, like they've been bombarded. And some of the kids go, woohoo, that was really exciting and inspiring, but they don't all. Some of them are just, they need a gentle transition.
It's hard to get it right. Yeah. And, so just bear with them. Don't instantly go, that's a terrible teacher.
No.
So I thought we'll break it down into areas. There's orientation, your new school campus, getting on, to class on time, write books, routines, all that stuff. And then there's your feelings about the school. Okay. So what can we do before? I think one of the important things is to involve your child in decision making wherever that is possible. So you're going to get a huge, like a wall of admin coming to you. And that's just everything to do with the way the new school works, what they're going to expect from you and your teen. Read everything if you can.
Yeah, I mean, depending on the school. Some schools, I think maybe the private sector, there's a lot of admin and a lot of information. I think some other schools there's less. It depends on the school, but there will be information that you need to know, like what they're meant to be wearing and stuff like that. Yes,
exactly. Consent forms. And I'm glad you raised what they're supposed to be wearing because that came up a lot with us. And I would go through the forms and say, well, it says your skirt should be this long. And the thing is, so I made sure their skirt that's the shortest it was allowed to be. They turn up at school and they're like, Mum, I look like the grandma.
Yeah.
Everyone else's skirt and everyone rolls their skirts up. And so you can't win as a parent.
No.
And one of the top tips is to talk to, if you can find any parents who've been through this already at that school, get the lowdown.
Yeah.
Do they use these bags? Do they actually use these coats? Don't buy the coat right at the start.
Don't buy a jumper.
Just hold off.
Never buy a jumper. No one wears a jumper, even when it's -5. It's a waste of money.
Yeah, just don't buy that. Just there, obviously you need the important things like the school shoes, but you do need to just hold off with some of it. Log on. If there's a school website, log in. Sign up to the school newsletter. Great tip. What about the Facebook page? One of our listeners mentioned that and said, it was Eric Bristol. She said if the school has a Facebook page for the new intake, they often arrange meetups in the summer.
Yeah, some schools do. Some are less active, aren't they?
Yes.
So, it just depends.
But you don't want to be the person who missed out if that's happening. No. So that's another, have a look, see if there's anybody, what's going on. And make sure that you're familiar with the online learning systems at that school. A lot of them now have them because we have had COVID.
Yeah.
So just get your head around that stuff. Buy the gear. But like we said, just be careful about what you do.
Yeah. And also I think it's really good to get a balance, isn't it? Because, we can kind of go in gung-ho, and if the kids are a bit, and depending on how old the kids are, so if they're going at 11 or they're going at 13, it's very different from changing school at 15, 16 or going for sixth form. It's really different. So when they're going into sixth form as new students, then, it's really good for them to take responsibility for the stuff and really know. And we don't want to kind of terrify them.
No. And that's why, I think it's worth, as a parent, us getting across this. And then if you think you can get your child involved at any of these stages, bring them in because as young as possible, because it gives them a sense of ownership over it. Because what you're subtly saying is, you're saying, do you know what? It's now a lot more about you. This is the massive transition that kids have to get their heads around, which one of my teens vocalized beautifully. And she said, Mummy, it was so much easier when I was younger because you would step in when I did something wrong and you'd fix it for me, or you'd do this, that. Yeah. And now you can't and you don't. And I said, no, that's true. And but we've subtly got to start moving them into that space where they start to realize that they have a lot more independence, but also responsibility for the things that are happening. Yes. And the choices they're making.
Yeah, and then there are consequences when they don't have the right gear and all of that kind of stuff. I'm just thinking of my twins. They're very different in the way they approach school. And I think for my daughter, who hasn't always been, how can I put it, very excited about going back to school, or going to a new school is different from going back to school, isn't it? But like having to do that maybe a bit more gently so that she's not like, ugh.
Yes, absolutely.
Because nobody likes the end of the summer holidays, do they?
No.
Well, some kids do, but she particularly doesn't. Whereas maybe my other kids were a bit more like, oh, yay, what we're doing, and kind of have a new notebook kind of thing.
Yes.
So it's, picking your approach to your particular kid.
I think that's spot on.
I think she'd have run away screaming if I'd, really gung-hoed it.
No, quite. But also just getting them involved as you're going through the thing. So you say, oh, okay, so here's the school uniform. What do you think? Here's what they're saying. Because if they... Quite often kids are not aware of any rules unless you show them the rules. So you can say, what do you think? They've said this is a school. Can you speak to other kids your age? Just give them a little bit of space to think about it before you actually say, right, we're buying a school skirt tomorrow.
And it's really hard when they're new, isn't it? Because like you said, if they don't know the people, all they actually need is one day in school.
Yes.
And then they know what everyone else is wearing.
Yes.
And that's what they want.
Or what I did with my kids is I arranged, because no one else seemed to be doing it, I spoke to the school and I said, can I have a list of parent names? And I contacted all the parents, just a kind of group message.
You allowed
and said,
that?
They allowed us that.
Wow.
Or no, the parents had to said they were okay with that. So the school has to have, when you fill in the forms, the school has to have consent to whether they were prepared to be contacted.
Okay.
So anyone who was on that list, I just messaged them and said, hi, I'd love to arrange a little get together, tea and cake, just so the girls can meet each other beforehand. It was just perfect. Yeah. So really, really, because
that's amazing.
They just calmed down because they'd seen the whites of the eyes of some of the other girls, and they didn't walk into a sea of faces and have no idea who they were talking to.
I think that's brilliant. My eldest went to a massive sixth form college. I think they'd have laughed their heads off if I sent them that email.
Yeah, that's a bit older, isn't it? No.
But also the point I was going to make was that it was just after COVID. He hadn't even seen the college. He hadn't been there. He went with a friend in the end, but they didn't have the same lessons.
But even that's helpful. Having someone that you can walk really into the environment with. So even if it's someone who's not even necessarily going to the school, if someone who's going on the same bus or someone who's going on the same train or going in the same direction where you can give them a lift and they've got an anchor on that first day.
And I think we kind of sometimes the journey to school is a really big deal. I've kind of come to that conclusion over the years. How you get to school and the journey and who you're traveling with and all of that is really key. Whereas sometimes I think maybe I've dismissed it. My kids get a train to school, and it's a really big part of
Massive.
Being prepared. And when they first were new in that school, we actually when my boy was younger, we did the trip on our own, just so that he knew which stop to get off and stuff like that, and get the train ticket the day before. Now I'm running to the station in the morning, like 5 minutes before the train, going, I haven't renewed it. But the journey to school, who are you going to walk with, and have they got the same bag as me when they're a particular teenage age? When they get older, they again don't mind so much, but that is important. And how are they getting home? Those things we kind of think aren't as important as the actual school day, but actually they're a big part of the day.
And I'm glad you said that, because getting to school, things you can do are work out what the route is. You could practice it once at the time of day when they're going to be using it. Talk to them about what to do if things go wrong. I mean, I turned up in England aged 10 and had to catch a bus to school. And one day I came out of the school, it was late because I don't remember why I had stayed late. And the bus drove straight past me and I was in the middle of nowhere. And that was the last bus.
God.
So there were no phones. I had to walk to the nearest house and knock on the door, get them to help me. So just have them ready to know, maybe their battery's flat if they have a mobile or anything. Just, what do we do if things go wrong so that it's not a crisis? They've already, we had this conversation. Here's how we cope.
And it's the unknown that's stressful, as we've talked about a lot of time, the unknown. So if you've done the journey and you've seen it, you've seen the bus stop, you've seen where you walk up, then they can go, oh, I know that bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And with my daughter, when her first day was on a train journey. No, the first day, actually, no, I drove her in. That's true. I drove her in and I met some of the parents. Yes. And then the next day I put her on the train and I paid for a cappuccino, and she was very excited because she got to the train station and she could buy herself something. And it was just one of those things where it just made it fun to go.
Yeah.
To also talk to them just about things like listening to music when they're crossing the road, all those kind of really minor things that can be major. Okay, so enough of that. Working on routines before and after school. I totally got this wrong. Hands up. I didn't even think about this beforehand. And, my daughter would come home from school and I'd say, so what's your homework? Oh, I haven't got any. Really? Because I thought you might have some homework by now and you don't seem to be doing. So what I should have done with her was had a conversation with her before she started school about what was going to be her homework environment. Where is it going to be? And the fact that she should expect from day one that there will be homework and that I will support her, in her choosing when she was going to do it. So, because you don't want to be the nag saying, right, you've got to sit down. So what I learned when she comes in, put all her electronics on the kitchen table, go and have a snack, just decompress a bit. And then I'd say to her, so when are you planning to do your homework so that I can fit supper around it? And it meant that she had some control over it.
Yeah,
and it turned out she did have homework, but she was, she wasn't happy.
Yeah, and we need to review that, don't we? I'm going to have a conversation with my kids before they start school again, particularly one of them. They're going into a more important, in inverted commas, year. But they, some of them, and I have twins who work really differently. I have one who likes to do it the second she gets home, because then it's done, even if it's not particularly well done. It's done, tick. And I have another one who will be doing it, beyond when he's supposed to be asleep in bed.
Yeah.
So they're completely the opposite ends of the spectrum, but it's their choice, and then there's a natural consequence to that if they don't do it.
Yes. But it's just worth flagging it up and going, okay, how's this routine going to work?
Yeah,
what time?
Works for us,
we know how long it's going to take you in the morning to get what's that journey. Yeah. So this is why rehearsing the stuff beforehand makes it so much easier, because then you can work back from that and say, you need to be in bed by this time.
Yeah, exactly.
And then have sort of a half-hour minimum decompression time before that, when there's no electronics and they're just doing something that's really pleasurable and relaxing.
Actually, that thing with bedtime is interesting. I've had that conversation with mine, trying to get them to work out, okay, how many hours of sleep do you need? Because obviously summer holidays is, free for all. Well, it is in our house anyway. Okay, how many hours do you need? Okay, works out. Okay. So then when do you think you need to be in bed? okay by this time. So then how long does it take you to brush your teeth? How long does it take you to... So when should you go upstairs? And then there's this kind of big kind of,
yes.
Gosh.
And it's really boring. So they're never going to think about it unless we talk it through, right?
Yeah, but I want to go to bed at this time because that's the time in my head I think is cool and okay for me to go to sleep at.
Yes. So yeah, I just, it's better to have these conversations before because the technology thing, we'll come on to that, is going to be a big wave of focus on these things. So let's go on to the emotional stuff because we've done all that. We need to be clear about our values before they start school. And it really saved my daughter because I was quite clear with her about what I thought about drinking alcohol, vaping, all these things. You can listen to. We have episodes on all these topics. So do have a listen because they help you to think through where you sit. And we do all sit in different places. I've had a lady contact me with a 13-year-old son who said, I wasn't ready for this. He's 13 and I've realized I need to have a drugs chat. Right. So so we need to actually know that this happens quite quickly.
Yeah.
So just be clear beforehand because then it saves them if they get into a sticky situation. And expect to have your views challenged.
Yeah.
Because they're going to go into a new environment and they're going to say, whatever. They'll come back with their own viewpoints.
And they'll be experimenting with who they hang out with. It's really vulnerable time for them.
Yes, it's
really
very vulnerable
because they're being faced with all their vulnerabilities.
Yes.
Is anyone going to like me? Is anyone going to sit with me at break? Is anyone going to, we all experience that, but it's really vulnerable.
Yeah.
So they really need a big, caring, nurturing place at home.
And with that in mind, listen to the Talking with Your Teen episode, which was very early on. And that's about how you can set up this relationship where they feel they can tell you anything and you're not going to judge them. Also, how not to overreact because you're going to hear some things that maybe you won't like. And very, very importantly, if your teen has a camera on their phone, you need to think about sexting and you need to think about the pressure that they might come under, either if they decide they're going to ask for nudes or they will be contacted by people asking them to send things. Trust me, this happens a lot. So just prepare your kid to know how to manage any request like that.
That's a brilliant tip. I mean, a lot of schools, I think they're getting better at having talks with the kids, which is really brilliant, but they don't all listen and they maybe aren't in that day.
They're not. Yeah, exactly. But also just coming from you where you're in no judgment, you're just saying, I just want you to understand that this could happen and here's how you deal with it.
One other thing I think is when they start a school and start the new school year, even if they've been at the school for forever, but particularly if they're new, is they are so tired.
Yes.
They are
exhausted.
so tired.
Yes.
And they are really vulnerable. It's really hard and they might be feeling really edgy and they might take it all out on us, which they probably will. So suddenly you think, your kid's turned into the Wicked Witch and this new school has done this to them. They're just knackered. It's really tiring being on alert all day in a new environment. We know that as adults. You start a new job. It's really tiring and it's even more tiring for a teenager. So it's really good to just remember
so many things
if they're
happening.
ratty, if they're rude, if they're just tired, they need you to have their back.
Not overreacting.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And coming back to it, judgment free. Just give them a space where they can talk about how they're feeling about things, and actually really be positive because we know this is going to be really hard. But let's not talk too much about that. We can say you can normalize it and say everybody's going to find this hard because all new things are stressful. But they're also very exciting. Yeah. And there is no limit to who you can be and what you can achieve in this new environment. Just remember that and focus on the positivity of the experience. Because if they pick up on the parent being anxious about it, that's where the anxiety can start to just set seed.
I think that's so important. That's such an important point because that relates to everything we do as parents, isn't it? They pick up on our nervous system. And if our nervous system is jangling and we go, I hope my kid's going to be all right in this new school. They're going to be going, I hope I'm going to be all right in this new school.
Absolutely.
If we go, you're going to be great. You're going to be fine. Have you got any money for break snack? Brilliant. Off you go. Have a great day. Yes. They're going to go, oh.
Actually, I'm fine.
They are sponges. And it's hard for us to do that. It's hard. But checking in on ourselves. How am I feeling? And, can I curb that?
I
If
think
you
this
are
is
feeling
massive.
anxious.
This is no, Susie, you're spot on, because we've been through this, haven't we? We've talked to our parents about this, and reminding your child that friendships take time to develop, and reminding yourself, because you'll sit there and think, oh, nobody's talking to my child, and your child will come home and say, I haven't got any friends, I'm all alone, and then when you talk to the school, don't sit there and think, this is awful, these horrible children. Communicate with the school and say, I'm hearing this, what are you hearing, what are you seeing? And most of the time they come back and say, well, she seems really popular. So just remember, just don't get too sucked into it all.
And some schools, they don't have always the capacity to to be able to do that immediately, so give it a bit of time.
Yes. So Sally Bust, one of our listeners, said she wished that she'd encouraged her daughter to sort of make new friends and not just cling on to her old friendship group, which is normal. I think it's normal to do that.
That's really hard, because, one of my kids went with a massive friendship group, and he's still in that massive friendship group. They love each other. They've known each other for years, and they've different kids flit in and out of it, but, that's normal.
Yes. And if your child's nervous about fitting in, just reassure them that everybody is feeling the same thing. Normalize these very real emotions and just say, that's what teenagers feel. That's a very normal thing, because very often they think everybody else is coping really well because everyone's putting on a show and they think they're the only person.
Yeah. And extroverts, when they're anxious, they go mental and crazy and are really kind of showy-offy and loud, and that is mistaken for confidence. Introverts, they shut down, and this massive generalization here, but shut down, and they're quiet, so they feel shyer. Just because somebody is really chatty and loud doesn't mean they're feeling confident.
No, absolutely.
It could just be their anxiety.
Absolutely. And listen to the friendship group. Well, actually, we've got two things on friendships. Both will help with your kids with the skills of making new friends and also the dynamic of friendship groups. So it might be worth having a little review of those if you haven't listened to them. I think one of the really important things that we have to keep sight of is that when they first move, as you've said, there's a massive amount of stuff going on. Very often there's a transition dip. Their performance in some way, possibly across the board, could go down because they are juggling too many things. It's like when I was learning to fly, you need, your brain can't cope with everything. So what you do when you start learning, because it's such a lot of stuff going on in the cockpit, you have someone with you who will do everything for you except the one thing you're learning to do.
Oh, that's clever.
And because they load shed, and then what they do is give you something extra on top of that, and slowly you transition to the point where you can cope with all the different things you've got to remember.
Oh, what a great metaphor as well.
Yes. But you wouldn't expect someone to get into an aeroplane and be able to.
No.
And it's sort of similar. So just remember, if they become terrible at relationships, it may be that they're just overwhelmed somewhere else and they're focusing their skill and attention somewhere else. And if they academically start to drop, keep an eye on it. But just remember that all these other skills are really, really important too.
Yeah. And kids are different. Like I have one kid who is so attuned socially to what's going on that is where all their energy goes when they're new and all of that. And then there's no more capacity. Like literally.
Sorry, I can't learn. I'm too busy with my friends.
Too busy noticing what everyone's doing in the room. And then that passes, and then then it settles, and then we're good again.
Yes. And so what we need to do is we need to manage our own anxiety and emotions about it.
They'll be fine.
Let them do more. Let them do as much as they can. Keep an eye on them. But if they're looking like they're not coping, just be there. Just keep checking with them every single day. You need to check in with them. Find a space, whether it's 10 minutes in the car, whether it's just before they go to bed, whether it's around the dinner table. Just check in with them and try and listen. Use those two techniques, the active listening and the super silence, just so that you can try and gauge where are they at. And if they say that they can't do something, don't jump on it. No. Don't jump on it. Just be empathetic.
Yeah, try and find, the fun teenagery bits in the day. Who did you hang out with at break?
Yes.
What did you do? Did you buy a snack on the way home? What was it? What did Fred do? Like, that kind of stuff. Who was on the bus? Rather than, what did you learn in history? And what did you, have you got, maths
Are you
homework?
paying attention?
Yeah.
Yes. But I just want to go back to this mobile technology. It's actually super, super important because it's so much a part of teenage life, and different schools have different policies. We're in this situation where once you've got one kid in a friendship group on Snapchat, it's very hard to resist as long as you can. But once they're on it, they're on it. And you can listen to our Snapchat episode. You can listen to our screen time episode. It's not all bad,
No.
right? It's incredibly sociable and can be incredibly fun. Just keep an eye on whether it's actually causing more anxiety than it's helping. And it's, it's an entirely different episode, but it's just be aware that this is going to be a major part of your life going forward, and managing it is something to think quite clearly about. Where do you sit in terms of that? And
yeah, and it's also okay if you don't know and you have a transition time where you're not quite sure because it's all a bit new. Yeah.
Well, do you listen to the screen time episode, because we've talked about the techniques you can use, why it's an issue. The specific things are they need sleep.
Yeah.
They need sleep so badly. So making sure that there's a kind of dead zone where there's no media at all is one of the most important things that you can do. Yeah. So
really
be distinctive about that.
Yeah.
One other little thing, financial preparation, money management. We have an episode about giving your child an allowance. That's worked. I know that you didn't do that. It's worked incredibly well for us. It's been transformative. Both my kids love it. And the one who was very spendthrift has turned into a real saver, really focused. They all know what the price of everything is. And when we go into the shops, they go, oh, look how expensive that is. They're very, very conscious of which is great. It's been very helpful.
When mine suddenly went to secondary school, they suddenly could stop at the sweet shop on the
Yes.
Yeah. Break time snacks are the bane of my life. I'm so disorganised. I never have the coins or the snacks. Every morning it's oh God.
No, you see, mine have got a Revolut card and they just use
they
that
can't
for,
pay like that.
No. So another quick one. I have a daughter who's got educational differences, and I thought I had sent the report to the Senko. I had informed them about it. I just figured that the whole school would know about it. And within a week, I discovered that the provisions that were supposed to be in place were not in place. So please don't ever assume that everyone in the school has got the message. If your child has very specific needs, you need to be on it, unfortunately. You actually, you can't assume the school's going to know. So, go in there straight away with an email and just say, hi, just checking in, you've got this information.
And kids, when they're new, they usually don't want to put their hands up and say it, do they?
No, exactly. They don't want, it'll mark them out. So just be in the background. Don't wade in straight away, but at least cut touch points. Did you know? Can I just double check that you've made sure everybody knows this? Because you know your child and love your child more than anybody else in the world. They're not bad people. They're just overwhelmed. The school will be overwhelmed with the amount of admin and the amount of kids they're having to get to know. So if you're the parent who's helpful, who says, I just wanted to touch base with you and just make sure you knew this.
Yeah, no, I've had one of those kids who needed a laptop, and just flagging it's really helpful for the teachers.
Exactly. It's one less thing for them to worry about. If children are struggling with the transition, they might not want to go to school or refuse. They can feel sick on Sunday nights. It can present as physical things, and they can actually vomit. They may seem like they're not interested in the schoolwork or the activities. Now, this happened where my daughter, things were going wrong at school, and she was just saying, oh, there is no homework. And I was saying, I think there probably is. And there was a lot of stuff going on underneath that.
Yeah.
And that's the time to don't leave it. Don't think, oh, she'll figure it out. You want to get in as quickly as possible when things start to go a little bit wrong, because it's much easier to try and find solutions together.
And that's also why it's so important that we take a chill pill, as my kids would say. And don't, from are in control of our own, if we have any worries about them starting a new school, because they do pick up on it, and then it can manifest itself and escalate.
Yeah. So if they're saying they don't want to talk to you about their friends at school, or they don't, it could be they're just normal teenagers. It could be something more. So it's a light touch.
Yeah.
Tell them that if anything happens, I think what happens, the thing that I learned from my daughter was that she said, kids don't tell you things because they either think you don't really care about their viewpoint, or that you're going to overreact.
Yeah, or you're going to judge.
You're going to judge. So as long as you come across as the person who's going to do neither of those things, and you're not going to march into the school and demand things change either.
That is key.
That's key.
Kids don't tell you things if they think you're going to do that.
Yes.
Or if they think you're going to go and make a big fuss, then they will shut down.
Yes.
Because that is just mortifying.
They want someone they can talk to who won't tell anyone.
Yes.
And that's
really important.
That's what my kids get from me. They know that I won't even tell my husband if it's something they don't want him to know.
I think that's really key, that you won't tell anybody.
Yes.
And that they can then trust it because they've seen that you don't tell anybody.
Yes.
And then if you need to tell somebody about something, then you ask their permission.
Yes.
You let them know in
exactly.
advance.
And what you do is you sit side by side with them and say, look out at the problem, say, what do you think? Can we do this? Can we do that? So they feel supported, like someone cares and someone's there with them, and they're not having to do it all on their own, but that you're not going to overwhelm them.
Yeah. And you can do that with the little things. I'm just thinking about that. That is super important, like that trust issue of asking for things, like, and you can do that with the little things when they say to you, like, I don't know, we've had this example, please don't show that photo to anybody, even if it's a funny, silly thing, or don't tell them. And then if they hear that you do, or they hear that you've been chatting with your mates about it, or done it anyway, because you thought it wasn't important, it was just a silly thing, or you've told their brothers or their sisters, it's gone. The trust is gone. It's really important.
And I've heard that. Yeah. I've heard that about my daughter's friends, where she said, oh, my friend told her mum this one thing, and her mum told other people. Yeah. And it just blew her mind, and she will never talk to her about these things again. And it's not irretrievable if you have done something like that.
Absolutely not.
Here's the top tip. Just say, that was completely unacceptable of me. I'm so sorry. And show them how you fix a relationship when it goes wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. But trust is good if you want them to open up.
Yeah. So has your child transitioned easily, or has it been a bumpy ride? If you enjoyed this episode and found it helpful, why not share it with others? Post it on social media, tell the school so they can tell other parents, and hit the follow button so you don't miss any of our episodes. If you want to delve into ones we've already recorded, you can search on our website. So use those keywords I mentioned. Just go to the website www.teenagersuntangled.com/episodes, and there's a search bar there. You can also message us there. We're on Instagram and Facebook. Susie has her own website. She's got some great blogs on there, really interesting reading. It helps you. Well, it's immersive, so you get more of the way that you think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Some more of the mindful therapy stuff.
Excellent tips on calming your system. And she does consultations on, like, what can you help people with if you're doing a consultation?
Yeah, good question. If people have a particular worry about family life, that, being a parent, their kid, they feel out of balance. It could be a specific problem, or it could just be a general anxious thing that they want to resolve. Tips with learning how to regulate your nervous system, practicing mindfulness so that we're not reactive and screeching the whole time. Stuff like that. Stuff like that. Doable, usable things that can be
that you can integrate into your everyday life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, so her website is
www.amindful-life.co.uk.
She's also on Instagram. Follow her. Lots of funny reels. Really good reels. I like your reels.
I'm very funny.
All right, that's it for this week. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Hi, this is Rachel Richards, and I just wanted to check in to say it's British summertime, which means two things. It's rainy and cold, and we're coming to the end of this season's research episodes. Now, I didn't want to just stop without letting you know what's happening and to say a massive thank you for all your amazing support. Everyone who's listened, downloaded, followed, and shared our episode, we wouldn't be where we are without you. We make no money from this. In fact, it's costing me quite a lot. Don't tell my husband. But knowing that we're making a difference makes it all worthwhile. In particular, I realise how hard it is to sit down and take the time to write a review. We've had some incredible ones, and each is cherished by us. Two have stood out recently. The one from Yannicka, who said, I spent ages trying to fix my teenager when I stumbled across these podcasts and discovered they don't need fixing, but understanding. And Paul, who said he and his wife have both listened, absorbed, and changed the way we parent off the back of such amazing insight of how our children see the world. We now have so much happier girls who feel able to relax in the home environment. We know you're just as busy as the rest of us, so from the bottom of our hearts, thank you for being so honest and open about how we've helped. While Susie and I are on holiday, feel free to listen to our back catalogue of topics that we've covered. I'll still be around on Instagram, Twitter, and via the webpage. And I'm trying out doing some interviews with some really interesting people. Let me know what you think and keep your questions coming. We'll be back to full strength in September, so make sure you follow us and you won't miss a thing. And we look forward to a new season with you.